Introverts, how did you meet your girlfriend? At a garage sale hosted by my mom, we were selling off the vast collection of consumer goods hoarded by my father. He wasn't your typical hoarder accumulating old newspapers, glass bottles, or garbage. Instead, he collected tools, CDs, home improvement items, camping gear, and hunting and fishing equipment. Our house was filled with piles of high quality items, all purchased on clearance because my dad couldn't resist a good deal, even if he didn't need the items. After he passed away, we had to deal with this enormous stock of goods, so we decided to sell them at very low prices in our front yard following his tradition. It was a scorching summer day. My mom asked me to help out because our house was on a busy street, and the sheer volume of items meant we would have many visitors. She was right. The day before, countless people had come, and although we sold a lot, there was still much left. I had posted an ad on Craigslist, and the day was even busier. It was a long day of negotiating with strangers, but by the end, we had sold 90% of the items and we were about to close up and celebrate with pizza. Just then, a car pulled up and a beautiful girl stepped out. She started looking through the CDs, found a few she liked, and then called me over to ask about others she didn't recognize. She seemed to think that since she'd found a few things she enjoyed, the unfamiliar CDs might be similar, unaware that they were all bought randomly from bargain bins around town. I did my best to help her, even though I hadn't heard most of the CDs, and managed to suggest a couple she might like. We kept talking and I showed her around when I wasn't helping other customers. There was an immediate attraction and we had some great conversations. She had to leave, so I gave her a good deal on her purchases and helped her to her car. As she drove away, I realized I hadn't gotten her number, which my brother and neighbor teased me about. However, she had mentioned where she worked, a restaurant nearby, and her usual schedule. So I did something out of character and pursued the connection. On Friday afternoons, I would drive from my office to the restaurant and ask to sit in her section. The food wasn't great, but she would chat with me when it wasn't busy, and I noticed her showing interest a few times. On my third visit, I showed my desire to see her again and asked for her number. 10 years, a marriage, and a child later, we're still deeply in love. So, in a way, I owe my dad for bringing us together even after his passing. Holy crap, man, this is a great story to start things off. I bet his dad is bragging up at the pearly gates talking about how his bargain bin CDs led to a lifelong love story. Good stuff. Story 2. I met her at a gaming club. I was more interested in a game of Dungeons & Dragons while she was with the Magic the Gathering group. She caught my attention from a distance, but as an introvert, I never mustered the courage to approach her. My social energy was fully consumed by D&D, leaving none for stepping out of my comfort zone to greet someone new. Writing became my hobby, which eventually led me to participate in National Novel Writing Month, NaNoWriMo. Engaging with the local forums, I struck up conversations with fellow writers, one of whom turned out to be her. She extended an invitation to a local write-in, and despite my initial hesitation to socialize, I couldn't refuse the opportunity to see her again. We became NaNoWriMo companions for the next few years and began spending time together outside of writing events. Many evenings during her final year of college were spent at her apartment, watching shows and writing side by side. After graduation, she moved away and our contact gradually diminished. 4 years later, I remained single, occasionally posting on forums, and had accepted a life of loneliness. Then she reappeared on Facebook. We had been friends on the platform before her move, but she seldom used it. Our conversations reignited, quickly transitioning to Skype. She was contemplating a move back to town and asked if I'd help her look at apartments. She made the long drive and we toured a few places, spending time together before she returned home. A few weeks later, she mentioned a cool theme park nearby. Again, she made the drive, we hung out, and then she left. This pattern continued for a couple of months, and I was oblivious to the fact that people don't typically drive for hours just to spend a little time with a friend. Finally, in the most endearing Skype message I've ever received, she inquired if our next meeting could be considered a date, if I was interested. I responded positively, expressing my enjoyment of happiness. That was 2 years ago. We're set to marry in July, and we still chuckle at how I was so dense. Story 3. I always thought she was really pretty. I noticed her when she first moved into the dorms. She was a year younger than me. She had a boyfriend throughout her freshman year, and I'm not one to interfere with that. After that year, during my sophomore year, I moved out of the dorms and into an apartment with some friends. My best friend at the time and I were both introverted, and we were worried about not meeting new people anymore since we had moved out of the dorms. One of the main perks of dorm living was being around hundreds of other people our age within a short distance at all times. So we made a pact to visit our old dorm at least once a week to meet new people and stay in touch with the underclassmen we had met. She still lived in a dorm but had moved across the street to an all-girls dorm. One evening in early August at the beginning of the school year, we visited our old dorm around 7 p.m. We found some friends from the previous year there, including her. I didn't know her personally up until that point, just that she was extremely pretty and knew her name. We decided to go to another girl's apartment to play board games, which was a clever way to meet people since my friend and I had bought a board game for that purpose. At the apartment, we met some new people. The game required pairs, and I was paired with the girl whose apartment we were in, while my friend was paired with the pretty girl. The night was fun. We played for about 4 hours and had great conversations with these people we barely knew or hadn't met at all. Afterward, I made sure to add everyone I had met on Facebook as it felt important to me. The following week, we visited the dorms again during the day, and I saw her there. Initially, there were probably 6 of us in the dorm lobby. People left one by one until it was just her and me. We talked, and she seemed really cool. I liked her, but after a while, she said she had to go study or something, and I assumed I had freaked her out. The next week, she was there again. We talked in a group before collectively deciding to play volleyball at the local recreational center across the street. She agreed to come, and before we left, my friend told me, "She's flirting with you." I didn't believe him, thinking he was just teasing me. We played volleyball for at least 3 hours, and she was there the whole time, despite seeming genuinely terrified to play. It was odd. It felt like she didn't want to be there, but stuck it out even when some people left halfway through. After the game, some people went to eat while others returned to the dorm. I went back to the dorm, and she came with me. We talked in a group for hours. I got really hungry, but was afraid that if I left to eat, she wouldn't come with me and we'd never be able to talk like this again. My friend brought me McDonald's, delivered it, and then left to talk to other people. I mustered the courage, finally, at 4 a.m. to ask for her number, which she gave me. I saw her the next weekend and she kissed me, leaving me ecstatic. The next week, I asked her to be my girlfriend. I plan to ask her to marry me because I love her. Honestly, his friend also deserves an award for being the real MVP in this story. Not only did he bring him McDonald's probably late into the evening, if not in the early morning, but he was also a very good messenger, telling the guy that she was interested in his friend. Story 4. I was the introverted girl in our relationship and dating an extroverted boy. Met on Plenty of Fish, a dating website. He looked cute in his pictures and his profile was super dorky with a million emoticons and exclamation points. We agreed to meet at a burger joint for dinner. I got there first in jeans and a tank top, and I was seated next to a window with a view of the front door. I chose not to wear makeup in my profile pictures and opted out of it for this date because I didn't want to be one of those girls who tries to look flawless all the time. Plus, it was a super hot day in June and I didn't want to sweat through my makeup. Anyway, I texted him to let him know I got a table. And then I see this giant dude in black slacks with a long sleeve black button down and with Goku hair walk up to the door. He stood by the door and opened it for anyone who walked up, obviously wanting to hold the door open for me. He was sweating like crazy and he clearly hadn't gotten my text, but I wasn't 100% sure it was him, so I didn't want to walk up to him. A minute or two passed of him opening the door when he looked at his phone and he had finally seen my text. He walked inside and I flagged him over. I already thought he was adorable because of the fact that he was slightly overdressed and trying to be a gentleman. We talked about all sorts of things. I found him very attractive. Our food arrived and he sent the fries back because he said they weren't fresh. This was a red flag for me because I was raised to just shut up and deal with it unless it was not cooked well or had bugs in it. But I kept quiet and waited to see how the rest of the day turned out. After we ate, he suggested I follow him in my car to a local bowling alley. I did so and we actually had a lot of fun. We just kept meeting to hang out and we hit it off. We've been seeing each other for almost 6 years now. Alright, if you're enjoying the video and the story so far and rekindling that newfound hope and love, please don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 5. I met my fiance on the first day of college, completely unexpected. I had programmed my schedule into my phone but failed to account for daylight savings time, so I arrived an hour early for my first class without realizing it. Determined to be social, I sat near the front of the lecture hall. I had plenty of time before the class, which was actually an hour later, and started talking to 4 other early arrivals about where we were from and other topics. They were all freshmen too, and I was thrilled to have found a group of friends so quickly. One of them was a gorgeous girl sitting in the row ahead of me, and I fell for her the moment she turned around to ask my name. Just before the class started, we agreed to meet for lunch later at a specific dining hall. About 15 minutes into the class, it became clear that I was in the wrong one. Checking my schedule online, I realized my entire schedule was an hour early. Too embarrassed to leave, I stayed for the entire class. I almost didn't go to the lunch we had planned because I was embarrassed, but the thought of seeing the gorgeous girl again convinced me to go. As luck would have it, I ran into her in the dining hall lobby and we ended up talking for 3 hours over lunch. We never saw the other 3 people from the class again, and I don't think I've spoken to them since. I added her on Facebook instead of asking for her number because I was too shy, and we continued to have lunch together several times during the first 2 weeks of college. Then she invited me to a party her roommate wanted to attend. We both hated the party, but it led me to walking her back to her dorm and our first kiss, and we've been together ever since. Story 6. My boyfriend and I are both introverts. We met in college through mutual friends and started hanging out with a large group of friends. One memorable day, we had a huge lightsaber contest in the squad, which was a lot of fun. One night, we were in the lounge room of my dorm with 2 friends. Our friends started playing pool, and while we were supposed to be watching a movie, we weren't really paying attention. Out of nowhere, he grabbed my sandal from the floor and ran off with it. I chased him, trying to get it back, and it turned into a playful wrestling match. It was so much fun. The next night, we were hanging out in his room, playing games until midnight. I didn't want to walk back to my dorm, so even though he offered to walk me back, I declined. He let me sleep in his room, and yes, we just slept. The next morning, there was some cuddling and kissing. Later that day, after skipping all our classes and ignoring our friends until dinner time, we decided to start dating. From meeting to dating, it all happened within a week. We just went for it, and I have no regrets. Story 7. I was stationed in Japan and was persuaded to go to a nightclub by a shipmate who wanted company as per policy for new arrivals. Not being a fan of nightclubs, I agreed to go only if he paid for my drinks. Once there, he immediately began asking groups of girls if they spoke English. He found a table of English-speaking ladies and started flirting excessively, which was quite embarrassing to watch. I was content to observe from the sidelines when one of the girls asked if I enjoyed the club. I was honest, telling her it was my first time and that I wasn't really into it. She shared the same sentiment, expressing her exhaustion with the fake atmosphere. We decided to sneak out together, using it as an excuse not to disappoint her friends. We ended up having a wonderful weekend in Yokohama. She showed me all the cool spots and introduced me to things I would have never discovered on my own. We dated for a few months and realized we were both just awkward enough to be perfect for each other. This October, we'll celebrate our 15th wedding anniversary, and we couldn't be happier with our shared introversion. We tell our kids to say we met at church if anyone asks, not because we're embarrassed about meeting at a nightclub, but because no one would believe it given our personalities. Man, telling your kids you met at church is just classic parenting, making me wonder about the real story about how my parents met. But anyway, the truth is, it's like the version of How I Met Your Mother, but instead of a bar, it's a nightclub. Story 8. I was once on a trip to Europe with my school, and several other schools were there too. On the second day, my group of friends started waving at a girl from another school, and she waved back. We began doing silly things like dabbing and sending air high fives. Eventually, we realized we were the only 2 still waving and doing dumb stuff, so we smiled and stopped. My friends and I nicknamed her Meme Friend and hoped to see her again before we left Europe. Later that night, all the groups from my school district ended up at a convenience store, and I saw her again. She was really cute, so I decided to talk to her. I introduced her to my friends to keep it casual, and we exchanged Snapchat and Instagram info. We walked back to the hotel and went to sleep. The next day, we took a train to the Netherlands and didn't see her for a while. But we did bump into her at the hotel in Apeldoorn and played pool in the hotel lounge. We chatted and discovered we had a lot in common before going to bed. My friends immediately teased me, saying I liked her, but I denied it. The next day, I admitted to them that I had fallen for her, and I had fallen hard. Our school district, including her school, went to Amsterdam for the day. When we returned to the hotel that night, she hung out in my friends' room. My friends, who are all girls, gave me advice on how to talk to her and not be nervous. I promised them I would tell her I liked her that night. When she walked in, I panicked a bit but managed to calm down. I hadn't told her how I felt, and my friends were getting impatient because it was almost time for room checks. As I walked her back to her room, I awkwardly said, "Hey, you're really cute today." She thanked me, and I continued, "I wanted to tell you I like you, but I think it might be weird if I say that now. She just said, "Oh," and I freaked out, ending with a quick goodnight. The next morning, I apologized, but she said she was glad I told her because, well, she liked me too. We hung out more and grew closer during the trip. I learned she's never kissed anyone or been in a relationship, and she learned about my past bad luck in those areas. We both hoped we would work out. We ended up alone in my hotel room, cuddled up and watching Netflix when she turned around and started play fighting with me. She let me win because I'm a bit scrawny, but I didn't care. We were staring at each other, and I kissed her for the first time. She said it was amazing, and I felt the same way. On the last night before we left, we snuck out and sat outside the hotel in Paris. The view was beautiful, and we talked and leaned on each other before kissing a few times and heading back to our rooms. We talked some more before we got on different planes, but she said we had to meet up once we got back to Canada. I agreed and suggested May 22nd, a holiday Monday for most of us, and she agreed. We hung out once before then, and it went very well. Now, she isn't my girlfriend yet, but her friend told me that she wants me to ask her today if she will be. I'm really hoping she says yes when I ask her. Story 9. After college, I was living in my parents' basement. However, two of my best friends from college were nearby and were getting married soon, giving me something to distract me from existential and financial problems. One night, the bride-to-be invited me over to discuss the bridal party and play board games. I was thrilled to be chosen as a groomsman. The bride also asked if it was okay for one of her bridesmaids to join us for board game night. Initially, I didn't think much of the girl who would later become my girlfriend. We were both shy, so we were probably equally cautious. But she knew how to play Settlers of Catan, and we ended the night on friendly terms. At that point, we were barely acquaintances, and I was more concerned about getting time off for the wedding. Months later, the bride opted for a charming bed and breakfast near her hometown for the wedding. The bridal party would stay there after the reception and help clean up the decorations the next day. My future girlfriend and I were stuck in the same space for nearly 25 hours. To break the ice, I attempted a magic trick. She volunteered, and I pretended to read her mind to guess the cards she drew using a marked deck. My presentation must have been convincing because she insisted I perform the trick for others. I was intrigued by her energetic personality, which was quite different from the quiet gamer I had met before. The wedding and reception were a whirlwind of dancing, drinking, and decorating the getaway car. I distinctly remember dancing with her at least once, and she later told me she had hoped to dance with me more, but I was busy with decorating duties. One of the groomsmen, Martin, was fixated on the bridesmaids and his chances of getting lucky. Despite his persistent questioning about my interest, I remained vague. The morning after the wedding, while we were cleaning up, Martin pulled me aside and urged me to make a move. He gave me paper and a pen to write down my phone number, insisting I give it to the bridesmaid I liked before she left. Reluctantly, I folded the paper and hid it under my watch strap. As we gathered for the send-off, I nervously searched for her. When she appeared, holding my boutonniere, I approached her and offered my phone number in exchange for the flower. That was 5 years ago. Now she's sleeping in my arms in our shared apartment. Once I've saved enough, I plan on giving her a ring too. And if you like these stories and any of them got to you, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video, and thank you for hanging with me on this one.